What's happening, guys? James Blonde here with MMOs.com, finally getting the chance to take a first look at one of our top most anticipated games for 2015, which is Skyforge from the Allods team, Obsidian Entertainment, and My.com. Now, this game is a free-to-play cross sci-fi slash fantasy MMORPG, but you guys probably already knew that because a lot of you have been waiting to play this game ever since it was announced last year, and honestly, I don't blame you. This game boasts a lot of interesting new approaches to very familiar features, from its classes, which can be swapped on command, to its Ascension Atlas progression system, to the fact that in this game you actually are playing as an immortal trying to become a god. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? All these things are really cool, but realistically only start to represent the game as a whole. So Skyforge just completed its first closed beta test, and I got a decent amount of time to play to share with you guys what to look forward to. Starting out the game fresh, you get introduced to the basic controls and combat as an Alien soldier, a mortal at this point, and Alien, of course, being the world that you're fighting for. But right off the bat, you're presented with some kick-ass visuals and pretty cool cutscenes, in my opinion, not to mention the setting or theme of the game. And I didn't realize how pleased I was having a futuristic Roman Empire art style and theme to this game. It's almost like Rise, Son of Rome, crossed with the futuristic look of Dead Space, which is definitely nice. It's definitely a nice change in scenery, if you ask me. So overall, the game looks great because it's built on the CryEngine, and with that you can expect to see good hair and cloth physics, and of course, crazy boob physics as well. And the cutscenes and NPC interactions with dialogue are an added touch. This scene right here is at the beginning, and it kind of put a grin on my face. 300, anyone? So yeah, you do get to learn the basics and experience the combat style along with a few mini-boss fights within the first few minutes of the game as a plus, but before I talk about the combat and classes, I'll get a little bit into the customization, and I'll start by saying that there is a lot of customization options to choose from in this game, and I'm excited for that. First off, you've got 6 presets to start with in either gender, and along with the rest of the visuals and art style in the game, you've got a cool mix between the cyberpunk and even some modern day dressy looks, like you're going to a club or something. I don't know. That's pretty much the look I was going for. Beyond that, you can adjust your physique with more presets or get very specific on height, body type, whether it's lean or sturdy, muscular or fat, or basically how proportionate you are in general. You pretty much have all these adjustments that you could ever want. Yes, of course, there is a boob slider and, in fact, an ass slider. No homo. All of these fine-tuning options transition over to the facial features. You've got presets first, and then adjustments come later, and I've got to be honest, you can really get the accurate look down if you give it a little bit of time. The only thing I see lacking that some players may be wanting are things like blemishes, scars, or even, face paint options. But if you notice, it says work in progress at the top, so, this might be something planned. Who knows? And it does have some style options for things like earrings, hats, masks, and other costume items. Plus, costumes are collected as you play through the game. So you've got a lot of options when it comes to customization later on. So I'd say if you're really into designing your character hardcore, you definitely won't get let down here. Okay, now we can talk about the combat and touch on some of the class options in the game. The combat in this game has been reworked a couple of times to resemble something beyond your typical tab targeting system, but at the same time not entirely action combat based either. It's really an in-between the two type of thing, like a happy medium between Arcade and Vindictus, if that gives you an idea there. Maybe more along the lines of Neverwinter. Depending on your class and abilities, it can feel like an action combat based game, and other times it feels like a fancier point and click, kind of like DC Universe Online. I can say, however, the skills are really fun to use, and once again they look fantastic. Plus, with the control scheme in the game, they feel really good too. The range classes feel different than the melee classes, of course, but both in very good ways. The melee classes, like the Paladin or the Berserker, have really flashy melee combat that have skills that work off of combos more than anything. And honestly, the way these abilities apply physics to the enemies you're attacking make it feel really smooth along the lines of Vindictus, and look really nice on top of that. Now, the range classes, like the Cryomancer and the Lightbinder, focus a bit more on single abilities that offer single or multi-target functionality, and the cool part here is that each class's abilities are filtered that way in the abilities menu, so at a glance, you can really get a nice overview of all the abilities that you're looking for, which can be really helpful due to the fact that you can change classes on the fly. Anytime you want, you can just go into the menu and switch back and forth between classes. It's actually a really cool feature, and there's a little bit more to it than just that, but I'll talk about that shortly. So the movement and controls are more like a reticule-based action combat game, which adds to the feeling for sure. You target individual enemies by mousing over them with your reticule, or you can switch with tab, but it's really effective enough to quick target with your mouse, and you're not locked into any particular target, so it's easy to switch from one to the next. Plus, there's a lot of movement in this game, so not only does it offer dashing, but you pretty much have to use it because each encounter with a group of enemies, or especially bosses, is a fairly tactical fight. Sometimes it's annoying, most of the time it's fun. But throughout the game, there's a lot of tricks to keep you on your feet, and that's just a little bit about the boss mechanics. Attacks come in variety, sometimes detonations, sometimes telegraphed projectiles like this, and instead of just spamming away at these bosses, a lot of times you have to think about how to defeat them. At least most of the time. Like here, this guy actually makes holograms of himself, and you have to keep an eye on the original one, which also looks like the hologram, and attack it. Otherwise, you've got to try and take all of them down until you figure out which one is the original one. And yes, each hologram attacks you in this form, so you get really close to dying if you're not careful. This boss here has ethereal hands that come towards him throughout the fight. The dark ones are harmful to you, the light ones are helpful to you, they provide you a health boost, but if they reach him instead, they give him the boost instead, so you gotta, get there fast. And that's only a few examples of the boss mechanics in this game that keeps the experience interesting. Another thing that probably won't let you down in this game, especially later on in raids, because these are honestly just some of the first low-level bosses you'll encounter, and they offer these features. But back to what I was saying about the combat, the abilities themselves come in a variety of styles as well. For example, with the Cryomancer, after you progress a little while, your first ability on left click gains an alternative AoE effect by clicking and holding, whereas the single clicking rapidly casts a single target projectile instead, normally. So there's actually a little bit more than what you see on the surface of the combat system in the game, and there's even more to it than that. Some abilities cast instantly, and some you can hold and charge, like the right-click ability with the Cryomancer. Charging it up will deal a lot more single-target damage and a much higher chance to crit than using it rapidly. Oh yeah, and this game also has finishing moves that are cool, that make the combat, or at least the end of the fight, feel a little bit more satisfying. You'll notice when an enemy gets low enough on health, you're able to press E and do a finishing move, which for the Cryomancer is turning them into a lovely mound of ice. Almost like a Sub-Zero fatality, minus the part where he kicks you in half, of course. Either way, it's kind of satisfying, probably even more so for the melee classes. Later on, as you progress, the game introduces you to more abilities slowly, unlocking them as you go, and you get to unlock some of these in the class atlas, which I'll get to next. See, in Skyforge, there's no actual leveling system in the game. It's actually based on a prestige system that allows you to advance based on the total of your stats, and as more prestige is gained, more content, gear, abilities, and other features are unlocked. But before I get into that, what I was beginning to say is at a certain point in your progression, you gain an ultimate ability, which of course is different for each class. The one for the Cryomancer is the huge AoE explosion that you see in the announcement trailer that makes you say, ooh, I have to play this game right now. So yeah, as you go along, your abilities get more and more sophisticated. You also unlock talents that modify your existing abilities, which gives you a bit more variation in that sense. Like this one here, if I use the AoE function on my left click ability by click and holding it, this talent helps me do more damage to enemies caught in the surrounding AoE that have less than 50% health. Pretty helpful. Get more of these as you progress, and your abilities start to become more godlike, if you will, if they don't feel that way already. Now, the only part I would say is simple, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, is the way the gear is set up. As of right now, it consists only of your rings, your weapon, and a secondary item. In the case of the Cryomancer, it's an icy frame that goes around your crystal and works as a defense item. You pick up gear as you go along, of course, but cosmetically, nothing looks different, and there isn't much to the stats, so you basically just pick the highest stats and roll with it. Later on, they'll probably have a little bit more depth here, but in any case, this game also has a gear upgrade system that's somewhat convenient. You can disassemble old gear to get item upgrades, to upgrade your gear slots, versus the gear itself. It's broken down into 3 sections. Upgrading your weapon section is going to give you more damage, secondary is going to give you defense stats, and so on. Like I said, it's convenient because you're not having to enhance each piece of gear over and over again as you get new gear. If you equip new gear, your upgrades stay where they are. So it's cool, but hopefully this doesn't become a problem when they implement the cash shop. They're going to have to consider that when they add it in. Sometimes these upgrade systems can get a little tricky. Okay, so now I'll get into progression. I briefly mentioned that it's based on a prestige system, but in order to improve your combat stats, gain new abilities, and access new classes, you progress through the Ascension Atlas. This eventually lets you mess around with the different classes, which, like I said, you can switch back and forth from at any time, right from the beginning, and once you've found your playstyle, you develop your character this way. Progressing through the Ascension Atlas is done by gaining specific resources that you get by doing certain missions and completing quests. There are essentially 4 different types of resources used to unlock nodes here. You've got Rubies of Strength, which are the red sparks as they call them, used to unlock red nodes that increase your damage as well as help you unlock new abilities. Emeralds of Life, the green sparks used to increase defensive stats. The Sapphires of Knowledge are used to add secondary stats and also learn new talents, like I talked about earlier. So you'll notice though that this is a very linear path and you have to have enough resources to unlock one node at a time, regardless of what node is next and how many resources you have for that particular node. So you might have a boatload of one resource, but you can't get to those nodes because you haven't unlocked the first one yet. This will make you selectively go out and farm for whatever resources you need to keep this process going and actually progress in the game. Now, don't think it's linear the entire way. Later on it will split and you can then make choices on what abilities you take on. Sometimes you can build up enough resources to unlock several at a time. Now, each class has its own atlas, and once you develop one class to a certain point, you gain access to the second level of the atlas, which is considerably more complex. This one is more along the lines of the passive tree in Path of Exile, honestly. And from this atlas, you can unlock new classes and perks. I didn't get a chance to play enough to reach this particular point. What I did notice, though, is that when you switch between classes, you share the same resources in terms of sparks across each atlas. But I'm not quite sure how that works on early game. I kept feeling that if I switch classes early on, I'd get wrecked because I hadn't progressed at all with that particular class, and at the same time I was trying to advance my Cryomancer, so I didn't feel encouraged to use my sparks on any other class. But I also feel that that may go away once you get into the actual Ascension Atlas, the upper level part. Also later on you get specific resources similar to the sparks, except they only work for their specific class, so you have to apply those to whatever class you're working towards. Okay, so to make things a little more clear, hopefully, the gameplay in Skyforge is set up similar to other hub-based mission runners like Path of Exile, Vindictus, or Dragon Nest, with a variety of different missions depending on the size, type, and difficulty. They're pretty much set up in squad, group, and region sizes, and each one of these indicates what rewards are given in terms of sparks. So this is where you typically make decisions based on how you're needing to progress your class along the atlas. Some of these missions, the region ones, consist of a lot smaller quests packed into one really large area, but they do offer all 3 types of sparks versus the smaller missions only offering one particular type. These can take an hour or so to get through, but they are very rewarding, giving you a lot of gear and more sparks overall. The others are typically set up to run through like dungeons, with various quests in them along the way, with optional side quests that award you bonus credits, which is the in-game currency. You do get a lot of credits in this game, but you also use a lot. You use them to make upgrades, buy items in the shop, and in this game, open up slots in your inventory. And beyond all this, Skyforge dives into a lot more detail. The game has an order system that guides you into becoming a god through NPC adepts and followers that you build up. There's even a built-in social system called AlienNet that blows away the typical mail system that you find in any other MMO and replaces it with a Facebook-like system designed specifically for this game to create groups and class guides with social connectivity and even a wall that, you can post stuff on. But overall, guys, my first impressions of this game have shocked me. To be honest, I toned down my hype meter originally for this game because I really didn't want to be let down when trying it out, and now I regret that decision. The excitement hit me after experiencing the game's new concepts and twists in the typical features you find in other MMOs. There really isn't anything I can say I don't like about the game so far, but then again, it's still in closed beta with no cash shop as of yet, so there's still tons of stuff to look over. But one thing I can say is a bit lame is the voice acting in a lot of spots. Now don't get me wrong, I really like the NPC interactions, but wow, some of it gets hilarious.
Keep your eyes open and be careful. We are not immortal. Any questions?
This creature killed many of our men. Watch out for the axe.
Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Yes, this game is definitely worth looking forward to, for sure. I'm also excited to get into the second closed beta, which is going to introduce even more features and other classes to switch to. You can get into the closed beta by chance signing up at Skyforge.com, or you can pick up a Founders Pack, which will also give you access to other classes and guarantee you access to the betas. But for now, guys, head over to the Skyforge game profile at MMOHuts.com, or check out our closed beta written review for even more details about the game. And until next time, guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.